welcome to the May the 21st taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, Texas. As we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that have been very important in making history, and by chance, some of them are even making history this very day. And this is our history tape number 597. And we are so pleased, we're really honored to have two really great members of the community on our show today to establish the history of Juneteenth. And first of all, it's my honor to really say hello to Your Honor, Mr. Ed Hemphill.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes. Former City Council member of Grand Prairie, Texas, and Coach Reggie Brown. Oh, you're his honor too in all of the things that you do. And we're just so thrilled that you two gentlemen have come to be with us and keep us really straight on what's happening and what has happened in the past and what in the world everyone ought to know about, and that's Juneteenth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Juneteenth to us is a very special celebration, Ms.
Yes.
Jackson, as you well know. It's the equivalent of the 4th of July. We carry it in that type of esteem. The 4th of July, of course, is very important to all Americans. The 19th of June has special ramifications for African Americans, but we at some time would hope that all Americans could see what it means to us.
Yes.
And embrace it and love it for what it really is. It's something that's regional. It did not carry throughout the states originally, but now it's all over the United States and in some foreign countries. So we're very proud of Juneteenth. Coach Brown has corrected me several times on what I've been told about how Juneteenth came about, and I'd like to defer to him to explain the most of the history of Juneteenth, because he's more knowledgeable than I am. He actually has been involved in it for a few years more than I have.
Before we get to him, tell us about the real Juneteenth, historically and otherwise. And even though you've dodged the bullet,
Okay.
I'd like to know your affiliation with Coach Reggie.
Well, being a native Grand Prairian,
All right.
and a Dalworthian to be more specific,
Yes.
one who grew up in Grand Prairie. I'm a part of that family, that Reggie Brown and some other people more or less parented. We came from a community where it took a village to raise a kid.
Yes.
So the authority figures in our community were like parents to all the children. So
Yes.
I've always held Coach Brown in that type of aura, or he's always placed himself in a position of respect, because that's just his personality.
Isn't that good?
It's absolutely perfect. It helped me.
Did you
throughout my
did you
life.
just meet him in the community, or was he important in your school life by any chance?
He was very important in my school life, even before high school. All the children met the authority figures in the school that had the authority to move throughout the school, and Coach Reggie Brown was one of those.
Yes.
And I was fortunate enough to have him as a homeroom teacher. So I had to see him every day. My shoes had to be polished every day.
Yes.
My clothes had to be neat every day, and I had to do things in a timely manner. He taught us the importance of being punctual and showing up with everything laid out as it should be, to be prepared, to study, to prove yourself approved. Coach Reggie Brown was that guy.
That's wonderful. Now, Coach Reggie Brown, that's a pretty good send-off for you, but before you get to telling us about Juneteenth, how long have you been in Grand Prairie, Texas, and what role did you follow all of those years?
Well, I've been in Grand Prairie for the last, I'd say, 40 some odd years, and
Yes.
I come here as a teacher at Dalworth back in 1956, and I continued to live here. I moved here in 58, and I've been here ever since and become a part of the community, because I feel like if you're in the community, you're a part of what's going on in the community.
Oh, that's good. And did you, when you came to Grand Prairie, have you retired from the school system?
I retired from the school in 93.
In 1993?
93, yes. And I retired from Carter Riverside in Fort Worth. I left Grand Prairie and went to Fort Worth, where I worked at Poly and Polytech in Carter Riverside to the end of my terms.
And you commuted there?
I commuted from Grand Prairie to.
Oh, you are braver than Dick Tracy to get all of that, all of that traffic.
I only had to be there about 7:30, so
that was a good time.
I'd get up at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and get ready to go.
That's right.
And go to Fort Worth. And of course, there I tried to follow the training trend that I did at Dalworth and trying to mold character.
Good.
You can see a lot of good in a lot of kids, but unless somebody come along and mold that character, it goes to waste. Oh. And in doing so, I feel like that I've accomplished a lot as far as going from school to school or kid to kid. I try my example to set an example for them so that when they get up, they can set another example for the other kids to follow. When they look at Mr. Hemphill, they say, I want to be like Ed.
Oh, isn't that good?
So, you know, it gives you something to look back on and say, my life hasn't been all bad. It's been good.
Now, I know you have a family because when I call you, you have grandchildren that answer the phone and all this good stuff. How many grandkids do you have?
I have 11.
11. Oh, that is wonderful. What a heritage.
Yeah, I have 11 of them. The one that answers the phone is a baby. Bill graduates. I don't know why he got off down there, but he did. So.
Oh, but that's all right.
So
that's all right.
We can't fault him for making that mistake, but
no,
that's all right.
You let him out of the cage and no telling where we'll go.
That's right, you know.
That's right.
But anyway, he's pretty apt, and he knows up the way up, down streets, and he knows what to stay away from and what not to stay away from. And therefore, I say, in that particular respect.
Now I want you to pinpoint for me and start in and school me on Juneteenth, when it started, why it started, and something so that everyone in our viewing audience will just feel like they have been there and have seen the scene.
Well, to me, Juneteenth come a little late, as far as I'm concerned, because when it first was freed, we didn't get the message, so we had to wait a while. But when it did reach our neighborhood and our towns and things, it had a great infatuation on the people that was there, because
yes.
they knew then that they was on their way up.
Yes.
And to keep thinking about Juneteenth as a haven for us to travel and try to do better in life shows us that somewhere down the line somebody was thinking, and our foreparents was thinking, how to excel and get away from where they were, you know.
Yes.
Back then, you had very few, if any, black entrepreneurs, because the fact that, number one, financially, they didn't have the finance, and number two, if they had the finance, they wouldn't have been able to buy and stay where they wanted to stay. So now that it opened up a gateway for us to travel, and they had writing on the wall way back there, but we just couldn't read it.
Yes.
And once we learned how to read and began to analyze the situation, we began to grow. I don't know whether most people know or not, but most of the things you use in your home was done by a black.
Yes.
They invented your sweepers and all things that you have to work with today. And now you have modifications of those things, but they was the sole bearer of them, because they was trying to find out a way to keep them working so hard. So they found easier ways to do it.
Yes, that's entrepreneurship from the word go.
Yeah.
Where did you hear this from? Did this begin? I heard that it began in Galveston, that the first words came to the Galveston, Texas ports. Is that true?
They come through Galveston Port, and it seeped its way up through the northern parts of Texas. But back down there, they got the word, and we didn't have so much free use of telephones and things to get it around.
Yes.
So it had to be a mouth-to-mouth thing.
Yes.
It wasn't one of those things where you turn on the radio or the TV and you see this on TV. This traveled from mouth to mouth and railroad to railroad.
All right, now, when was the first time that you can remember that Grand Prairie heard of it? Do y'all have any record of that, Mr. Hemphill?
Miss Jackson, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863,
All right.
thereby proclaiming African Americans as full-fledged American citizens and giving us our freedom
Good.
from slavery. It reached Texas on June 19th, 1865.
That's 2 years or so.
Not quite, but
It's close to it.
The reason being, that's the last day of the cotton pick in 1865. So the freed slaves finished the cotton pick of 1865 before they were told that they were free. At that time, the Union Army had sent these battleships down to Galveston Island and pointed the guns on Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas in order that we be set free
Good.
and be recognized as full-fledged citizens. Of course, we know we still today have some problems, and there were problems with acquiring your freedom, because being free is one thing and feeding yourself is another.
That is true.
You know, so it was a time of celebration, and it was time of great hardship too, because all of a sudden we didn't have a home. All of a sudden we had to make a way for ourselves.
And your family, if
And
you had
our
a family.
families.
Oh,
That's-
yes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And for the second time in history, we found ourselves without any resources whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, when we were first brought here as slaves, we were stripped of our gold and all of our
Yes.
valuables,
Uh-huh.
and we were sold on
Auction box.
auction blocks, exactly
Yeah.
like Coach Brown says. And that's where when we were first stripped. And the second time was, I guess, when we had to leave Mr. Hemphill's plantation,
Yes.
because that was home. And we felt a kinship to the Hemphills that was more than the namesake.
Yes.
So all of a sudden we were thrust out into the world of the United States, and because of the extra labor that we contributed to the local states, we were supposed to have been granted retributions in the form of 40 acres and a mule
Yes.
in Washington. But by the time it got back to Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas, there were amendments and stipulations placed on those awards,
Yeah.
which required us to be able to fence off 40 acres. That, in essence, was the equivalent of having to have maybe $5,000 cash to buy the material and get the labor necessary for you to fence off 40 acres. Therefore, most of the African Americans did not claim their land.
They did not.
No, most did not because of that stipulation.
Did your family?
My family did.
Oh,
we
good.
have my mother's farm is in Chandler, Texas, which is 13 miles west of Tyler. And my dad's family is from Mejia, Texas, which was made famous by this
Yeah.
young lady that just passed away.
Yeah.
And my grandfather's farm there was on Highway 84. And you know, it's almost a given that in the United States, if you're not a property owner, you really don't matter. You know, you've got to.
It
have
gives
a
you some
commitment.
status,
That's
doesn't
right.
it?
It gives you status. You've got to
Yeah.
have a deep commitment to being an American, because we're different. I mean, it's okay to call us black people and Negroes and things like that in certain arenas, but I take a lot of pride in being called an African American.
And an American period.
And an American period.
Yes.
Because I'm different from a Jamaican,
Yeah.
from a person from Haiti, from a person from Cuba, or any of the other countries where I've gone and seen people
Yeah.
with dark skin.
Yeah.
America is the leading country in the world the rest of the world look at us to lead the way, and it's up to us to always try to put our best foot forward, and that's what we do.
When do you remember the first celebration, Reggie, in Grand Prairie, Texas, that you attended Juneteenth-wise?
The first one I attended, it was 1957. It was the first one I
From
attended.
57 on, you've been celebrating all of those years, I hope.
Yeah, I've been separating, but before then, when I was, say, 4 or 5 years old, and this was the day that they set aside for you to not go to work, or
Yes.
parents and things not to go to work, and they would pay you for that day. Back then, they wasn't paying no more than 25 cents a day, so
Mercy.
yeah, that was a thing. See, and people celebrated that, and they come together and they had their parties and their picnics and celebrated of the 19th of June, and that's for it spread it all over Texas. It started out in San Antonio and just continued to progress as it went along.
Good.
And then so in doing so, that it finally reached the maximum of other states around us, and then now when you turn it on, they celebrate it all over the United States, some form of the 19th of June. And the reason why they do this, even though, as Ed said, it was late coming, they do this because this was a national day that was put on the calendar for us to celebrate, and that's why they did that. We had, what people don't really understand and don't really know, that even back during slavery, we had some blacks that owned slaves.
Yes.
So therefore, all our life, some of us been free,
Yes.
but 90% of us
Have
been
not.
under the hood.
Yes.
And we couldn't express ourselves, or we couldn't attend certain churches or certain schools and things. So as the progress began to really broaden and scatter all over, kids nowadays, whether you're black, white, blue, or green, you don't have an excuse for not having an education, because integration brought by a whole lot of education that we didn't understand, that we thought we'd never have. And you have young men and women that to excel in different fields that we didn't think we'd ever have. Because back then, when I come along, you could only be three things. You could be a teacher, you could be a doctor, or you could be a lawyer. That was your
choice.
That was your choices. And number one, the finance was going to keep you from being most of those.
Yes.
And number two, you had to be able to excel and be in the high echelon of the class in order to
Get
get a scholarship
Yes,
for that.
You bet.
And then they wasn't giving no more than 50 or 60, and that was all over the state of Texas.
Yes.
So you had to be up there in the high echelon to get this.
You had to really hustle to do that.
Yeah, and as we go along now, we look at it and we see kids that's throwing it away.
Yes.
What I mean by throwing it away, they're not applying themselves to excel.
But Mr. Hemphill is working on that. Mr. Hemphill, of all of the Juneteenth celebrations in Grand Prairie, Texas, just say specific, our town. And I remember 89, 90, 91, and 92, we had a scholarship pageant where we had Miss Juneteenth. I have the little book here, A Dare to Dream, Miss Grand Prairie Juneteenth Scholarship Pageant. And it's at 1992 at H.H. Chambers Auditorium. We had the works. It was wonderful. Of all of the celebrations we've had, what was your favorite?
Ms. Jackson, the one that you just mentioned was one of the best that we've had thus far, but to be perfectly honest with you, which is what I've always tried to be,
Yes.
this is my favorite because I've been voted in as the Grand Marshal of the Juneteenth activities this year, and that gives me a great deal of pride in what we're doing. And
that has to be your
humbles
favorite.
me because Juneteenth is such a great thing. Like I said, my dad's farm was in Mahia, Texas. That's where the biggest celebration in Texas is held to date.
In Mahia? And that's where your Hemphill family came from, wasn't
That's
it?
exactly right.
Oh,
So
no wonder you're so turned on with that one.
Well, I'm so turned on because it is an obvious, undisputable signal and sign that African Americans are Americans too.
Yes.
Okay, and we've strived to attain that type of that level of respect for so long, and Juneteenth has always been that day when we could let the world know that we also had a holiday that recognized us for being here. See, in my mind and in the way that I think about things, which is in depth. See, the word discrimination or integration, for instance, it only means that African Americans can go to school with everybody else. Everybody else already went to school together.
Yes.
So it affirmed that we are being accepted. We have arrived, and those type of celebrations are important to me because I've been around the world, and I've not found a place that I love more than Grand Prairie.
Isn't that good?
Isn't it? So I'm committed to do whatever I can to help the positive growth that we're experiencing and the new way that everyone sees Grand Prairie. And I think Juneteenth is just a part of that. And I think all I'm doing is carrying on what Reggie Brown and David Daniel and people of that caliber did.
Yes. In Grand Prairie, Texas.
In Grand Prairie, Texas, my home. And like I said, I've been around the world, and I was looking for a place to live that I liked better, and it doesn't exist. Even during segregation, Grand Prairie was good. Grand Prairie was separate but equal, literally.
Yes.
And the African American community in Grand Prairie was healthy, and it's always been a point of pride. So, I love it here, and I think that my children love it here, and I hope my grandchildren do.
Yes. Now, I want to get down to the bare facts now.
Okay.
A young man with your experience, having been a city official and all of the other things you do, what do you now do for a living?
I am the receiving manager at Lone Star Park, and that gives me a lot of opportunities to be a part of the community as far as the benevolence part of what Lone Star does.
That's what I'm getting at. Because of your status at Lone Star Park and your status in the community, you're the main hustler for Juneteenth and many other charities and things in Grand Prairie, Texas. And I'm so glad you're at Lone Star Park because that really has helped many foundations that have no idea who's out there hustling for them.
Well, thank you, Ms. Jackson. It's been indeed an honor and a privilege to be able to help as many organizations as I have through Lone Star Park in Grand Prairie. And I look forward to doing more in the future. But Lone Star Park has been a positive impact on our community since day one. 80% of the monies that are wagered at Lone Star Park go back to the people. And it goes back to the people in many different ways. We help with the school district. We help with fundraisers. We help homeless people. We do a lot of things that impact the city in a positive way, that saves the city's budget from being so taxed, because you have another big player in town that truly is committed to the city of Grand Prairie.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned the city of Grand Prairie in one context. We don't have many more minutes left. I got to get back to Reggie in a minute, but what do you think now that the city has taken a role and is assisting with Juneteenth through the Recreation and Parks Department? Are you satisfied with that? Are you happy with that? Or do you have heartburn with it? Or I've noticed that they have really been supportive, and do you feel that that's the kind of support you need?
Ms. Jackson, I think the city is right on the money with Juneteenth activities right now, and I'd like to see Mr. Pruitt come back and take an active leadership role. I'd like to see Prairie Park as part of the activities to come in the future, just like it has been in the past for numerous years. I'd like to see more done for the people who actually sacrifice, like Reggie Brown, to get us where we are right now, and other teachers in the city. I'm very proud, like I said, to be here in Grand Prairie. because I think the future is so bright. I need to wear sunglasses.
That's good. That's good. You haven't mentioned Stack. That's my favorite person in your family.
Well, that's because you knew him well. But I think if you knew the other members, you'd see his influence. Because
He was your grandfather.
yes, he was.
He was the greatest of grandfathers to you.
He's the reason that I am what I am.
Well,
He was the person who influenced me to always try to do the right thing.
that's wonderful.
Thank
I just had to have a little tribute to Stack because he was on the street downtown in front of Miller's and all of the other places there. Very wonderful young man, and he was young when I knew him. See, back in our dark ages.
Yes.
All right, now, Brother Reggie, we have about 3 more minutes to go. Is there anything you would like to say about Grand Prairie, Juneteenth, and the celebrations to come, and say something to thank the young folks for participating?
I would like first, thank you, Ms. Jackson, for giving us this opportunity to express ourselves.
Yeah.
And I've been sitting constantly listening to Ed talk, but I think that Grand Prairie has come 200% since I've been here. I know that the things have changed in Grand Prairie, and I know that the kids are beginning to mix and excel amongst each other.
Yes.
And I also know that even the climate is different nowadays, because at first you had one place and that was across the track. Now we spread it all over Grand Prairie, and you're treated with respect, and that's 90% of anybody's life, being treated with respect. I know when I first went to Grand Prairie High, the kids up there, I don't know whether they were afraid of me or what, but they treated me with the utmost respect. And right now, I can go down the street and I can meet these kids. I don't care where they are, who they with, they're gonna holler.
And coming in this place for this interview today, in the front foyer, some young man that's studying to become a detective came up to you and just lauded and applauded you. Now, what do you think about that?
Well, Mr. Johnson, that's
One of your boys.
One of your boys.
One of the kids that I've
Yes.
taught, and one of the ones that, they understand that I'm gonna do whatever's right.
Well, what amazes me is that a long time ago, you would have never found that young man studying to be a detective in Grand Prairie, Texas, and his coach sitting in the front office there, patting him on the head and saying, "I'm glad you're excelling," because that was reality today, wasn't it, Mr. Hemphill?
That's reality today in Grand Prairie, Mr.
We have half a second. I want you to thank everyone for joining us on Juneteenth. Would you do that?
I just would like to invite the public to come out and see what it's about and enjoy the festivities and understand that this is just the beginning of better things to come. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's been delightful. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do, and that we document it correctly. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.